Welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be covering an article written by Gators Wire, and it says that SEC network analysts agree that the Gators control their own destiny. And you know what? To some extent, I agree with this as well. So we're going to break this down. Article written by Jesse Richardson of Gators Wire. There's a monumental. Sorry about this. There is a monumental midterm exam coming for the Florida Gators on Saturday as they've studied as they've studied up on ways to on ways to take the current kings of college football, the Georgia Bulldogs. It's set up to be it's set up to be the turning point of the season for head coach Billy Napier and his young squad. A victory over their arch nemesis would move the Gators up in the SEC East race and keep hopes alive for a trip to Atlanta. Analyst Benjamin Watson, who actually played for Georgia, and former Gator Chris Doering discussed on SEC Final Football that there are three teams that control their destiny. I guess they specifically are referring to the East only, because logically, if they were talking about in the ACC in general, I think Alabama would be a part of that list as well, because they haven't had a conference loss. I mean, their one loss came against a Big 12 team, Texas, a Big 12 team until next year when Texas joins the SEC. But anyways, um, Missouri, Florida, and Georgia are teams that control their own destiny. According to the duo, a win or loss from any of those teams will change the trajectory of the remainder of the already chaotic season. Yeah, it's been a chaotic season this year with all the big league collapses, the upsets, and teams that you didn't think were going to be a player at this point in the season are, Missouri being one of them. They all control their own destiny, Watson said. I think if you looked at this maybe 5, 6 weeks ago, we might not have picked these three teams. You picked Georgia, obviously, but you might not have picked Florida. You might not even be thinking Missouri, Kentucky, or Tennessee. But now you look at it and say, wow, the next 3 weeks, Georgia's going to play Florida, which is going to be a tough game for both. They play in the cocktail party in Jacksonville. That's always interesting down there, and then they both play Missouri. Missouri is riding into a bye week before they travel to take on Georgia, and then host Florida I guess the week after. On November 18, Chris Doering said the top two teams in the SEC East are obviously Georgia and Missouri, but it's difficult to truly measure the rest of the standings. How do you rank the rest of those teams? Florida's coming off that big win against South Carolina. You feel good about them. But, oh, by the way, Kentucky just beat the hell out of them a few weeks before. Tennessee may be playing better than all those teams, but yet Florida beat them back in September. So there's still a lot of murkiness as it relates to how hierarchy stands in the East. First things first, the world's largest cocktail party has to commence to see if the almighty Bulldogs can stay on this throne for yet another week. Kickoff between Florida and Georgia is slated for 3:30. Well, he's not wrong that there really is that quite frankly outside of Georgia and Missouri, there's really is no true uh, standard right now in the East because each team has had their own low point. Tennessee, obviously, Florida was their low point. They just lost to Alabama last Saturday. You have Missouri losing to LSU, who's not as good as they were last year, maybe even worse, definitely worse on the defensive side of the ball. Even Georgia, they haven't played that well. Plus, they're without Brock Bowers, and they beat South Carolina, but they trailed South Carolina. I think it was like 14 or 17 to 3 at halftime. So they haven't really necessarily played the best football, and they almost lost to Auburn on the road a few weeks back. So each team in this division has kind of had their bad moments. They had their real bad moments. Now, as far as the Florida and Georgia game, if you go to my Florida Gators prediction video, I said that I have Florida losing 5 games. It was Utah, Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, and Florida State. Well, they didn't lose to Tennessee, but I'm gonna stick with them losing to Georgia. I think even without Brock Bowers, I think there's just way too much talent on that Georgia team to them lose to a young Florida team that's still like trying to learn how to win because that's what the Gators are doing right now, they're learning how to win. And quite frankly, when the Gators are playing outside the swamp, they quite frankly have not done good. You know, Billy Napier is 0 for 2 in neutral matchups. Obviously, has a losing record on the road. Well, actually, has a losing record on the road and in neutral matchups. Has a winning record at home. But they just don't play well when they're not outside the swamp. And quite frankly, that goes back to mental toughness. And until Florida proves that they can be mentally tough outside of the swamp, it's hard for me to pick them. Now, they were able to get a road victory against South Carolina, but South Carolina is not a good football team. I don't know how some people can even argue that South Carolina is better than Florida, still better than Florida. I mean, Florida, I'm not saying Florida is great, but they're not on the verge of missing a bowl game. That's South Carolina. I mean, South Carolina got absolutely slaughtered by Missouri a few weeks back. I don't think Florida might lose on the road to Missouri, but I don't think they'll get beat by like 22 points. I don't see that. So Florida is going up against Georgia. This a victory over Georgia would be by far Billy Napier's biggest win. Bigger than Tennessee, bigger than Utah last year, bigger than South Carolina last year on Senior Day in 2022, bigger than even this past victory on the road at South Carolina this year. So what you're looking for is to at least make them respect you, make Georgia respect you. You probably won't beat them, but can you at least make them respect you? Because Georgia, after losing to Florida in 2020, Kirby Smart, you could tell, has the Florida game circled in red every single year. You know, he played for Georgia in the 90s, and in the 90s, Florida with Steve Spurrier at the helm absolutely just dominated and blew out Georgia every chance they have. Um, you know, in rivalry games in college football, sometimes you have to throw records out the window. An example of that was the 2021 Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama. You know, Auburn 6-5, Alabama ranked two in the nation, and Auburn lost to Alabama in overtime. So Auburn was close to throwing Alabama away for a college football playoff visit that year. You know, you obviously have other examples of that. You know, a big example of that was when Florida beat Georgia in 2014. Florida was unranked. Georgia was number 11 in the nation when they had that big win. So it was a great victory for Florida at that time. And you know, with rivalry games, they're just so unpredictable. And for Florida, outside of this game with Georgia, it doesn't get any easier for them. I'm gonna pull up their schedule right here. No, just go to Swamp 24/7. We're gonna go to Swamp 24/7 real quick, and we're gonna go to their schedule. So after they face Georgia, they got Arkansas coming up. Arkansas is two. They are a bad football team. Arkansas, I think, is 2-5 right now. They just lost to another bad team in the conference in Mississippi State, in which they didn't even score a touchdown in that game with um, KJ Jefferson. And mind you, Arkansas was at home, so I'm confident that Florida can beat Arkansas at home to get bowl eligibility. But I said a few weeks back before the South Carolina game that if Billy Napier wants this season to be deemed a success, he would have to improve upon his win total from last year. Last year, he had an opportunity to go 8-4 and blew it by losing to Vanderbilt and blowing the second half against Florida State last year when Florida was 6-4. That could have put them at 8 and have given them an 8-4 year. Right now, he's at 5-2. Quite frankly, most people have Florida winning 5 games or less at the end of the year. So the fact that he's already at 5 wins heading into his bye week with coming out of his bye week with 5 games left is a testament to the a much better job that Florida has done to expectations up to this point. So you're probably not going to beat Georgia. I think you'll beat Arkansas. Um, the next 3 games to me are going to be a murderous road at LSU, at Missouri. We all talk. It's infamous how bad Florida is on the road. And then you got Florida State heading into the swamp on the final day. Florida State just the thing with Florida State is that they're good, but sometimes they just don't play up to. I don't think Florida State really has kind of like Georgia has really played up to their potential. Like they were trailing 20-17 against Duke last Saturday with a one-legged quarterback in Riley Leonard, almost lost to two bad teams in Boston College and Clemson. So Florida State, if you're a Florida State fan, it's like, yeah, you're glad you're undefeated, but you know your team is not really playing up to their full potential. Like it kind of seems like they really shouldn't be winning close games against some of the teams that they've beaten this year. I mean, come on, you shouldn't have struggled in the first half that badly against a one-legged quarterback for Duke. And the fact that playing on the road at Florida will be by far your toughest road environment of the entire year. Clemson, is a not necessarily an easy place to play at, but I don't think it's as tough crowd noise and environment wise as it is playing at the Swamp. So, but anyways, I think after you beat Arkansas, if Billy Napier can steal one more victory against either LSU, Missouri, or Florida State to go 7-5, beating Arkansas and stealing one of these final three games right here and going 7-5, improving on your win total from last year from 6-6 to 7-5, and then winning your bowl game against whoever that possibly could be. Hopefully, it's a opponent that's like in your weight range because last year Florida probably was going to lose their bowl game to another opponent, but they had no chance of beating Oregon State, who was a pretty good team last year. They were 10-3, so they they were in that bowl game against Oregon State last year. They were just fighting above their weight class, so to speak. So if you can get an opponent that's better, that's more of an equal matchup towards you in your bowl game, and you win that, Arkansas, one of these final three, and then your bowl victory, that's an 8-5 record when nobody had you making a bowl game to begin with. So an 8-5, 6-7 to 8-5, it's a two-game difference improvement in your favor, and you're bringing in all this great recruiting class that you have lined up. It would do wonders for the program, and it might make you an even more an attractive, um, more of an attractive spot for the transfer for players entering the transfer portal because there's going to be a bunch of players entering the transfer portal after this year, just like there has been since the transfer portal is more open now than never before. So it would do wonders for the Gators to get it to be bowl eligible. You only need one more victory to do it, and I think your most likely victory is Arkansas, and stealing another victory against either LSU and Mizzou. And people are saying, oh, or Florida State. People are saying, oh well, you're not going to beat one of those teams. Well, that's what a lot of people felt about Tennessee. And Tennessee is a much better football team than Florida. Even though Florida did beat them, I don't have a problem saying that. I don't agree with people that still think South Carolina is a better team than Florida. That I will fight against. But if you can get a couple more victories and go 7-5 after going 6-6 last year, and get a couple of victories against the teams that you were not expected to beat, and for Billy Napier, you'll go from 3-5 in your conference record last year to now 5-3. It would do great for the optics surrounding your program, and it would make the program seem more attractive for recruiters and recruits and transfer portal adventurers in the offseason. So this is a grand opportunity for Florida to finally end the year off right and really kickstart the trajectory of the program. So this is an important 5 game stretch for Florida. So there's my video on it. If you're Billy Napier and in the staff, you're telling your players, um, it's put up or shut up time.